Already an established star, and seen as the good old boy of Hollywood and a sex icon of the 1970s, Burt Reynolds had made several car-based movies come the middle of that decade, and at the time had been living with longtime friend and stunt legend Hal Needham, who had been Burt's personal stuntman in the industry. While both men were on the set of the 1976 Burt Reynolds debut directed film, Gator, which was the sequel to the 1973 hit White Lightning, it was discovered by the crew that several of the Coors beers they had brought with them to the set in Georgia, where the film was in production, were mysteriously vanishing day by day. It was later uncovered that a housekeeper had been sneaking away with the beer and selling it at an inflated price to acquaintances, and when confronted, the housekeeper had stated that due to the unavailability of the beer in a state, it was worth the risk of stealing the Coors and selling it to make a profit. It was this story and situation that led to Hal Needham to come up with the idea that was the basis for the screenplay of the 1977 smash hit Smokey and the Bandit. Seen as one long car chase movie, the film had come to be when Needham, who had only been behind the camera as a second unit director, wanted this to be his writing and directing debut, as he had presented the story to Reynolds, who he had moved in with after he had separated from his first wife and needed a place to stay. Offering his friend and personal stuntman a home to live in, Reynolds and Needham were housemates for close to above or beyond a decade, and it was in this time when Needham presented his rough outline of the story he had titled The Bandit to Burt, and asked if he would be interested in starring in it. Upon review, Reynolds had seen that although the dialogue was rough, there was a story worth pursuing, and allowed his name to be attached if Needham could get a studio to back the project, and had promised to star in the film for his friend. After bringing on additional writers to polish the script, Needham was able to originally secure a tiny budget of $5.3 million from Universal Pictures, who would eventually, just before production was to take place, lowered the budget by a further $1 million, and on August 30, 1976, principal photography began on Smokey and the Bandit. With a story that was to have been set to take place over an 1,800-mile journey that needed to be completed within 28 hours from Atlanta to Texarkana and back again, a trip which in actuality was closer to 1,200 miles. Smokey and the Bandit was filmed entirely in Atlanta, Georgia, and its inclusive states pass-through would be faked to complete the filming. Offered the task by wealthy Texan and his son, Big and Little Enos Burdett, played by Pat McCormick and Paul Williams, the challenge is given to Burt Reynolds' character of trucker and folk legend Bo Bandit Darville to haul 400 cases of Coors beer to be delivered from Texas to Georgia to a Southern Classic racing event, where the Burdetts have a racer driving and want to celebrate his potential victory with the bootleg booze. After accepting the challenge and taking payment in order to obtain an additional vehicle to block for his rig, Bandit proceeds to seek the help of his longtime friend, Cletus Snowman Snow, played by country legend Jerry Reed, who was at one point the original choice to play the Bandit. The rig in question, which would play a major part in the film, was said to have been one of 3 Kenworth W900As obtained, 2 1974s with silver KW emblems, and a 1973 model which carried a 50th anniversary gold emblem on its hood, carrying most likely a small cam Cummins 350 engine with a 13-speed transmission and 3-stage drive. It is here soon after that we get the introduction of what will be affectionately known as Band 1, a 1977 black Pontiac Trans Am with gold trim, equipped with a 6.6 litre 400 cubic inch V8 engine with an output of around 200 horsepower. This newly redesigned Trans Am would become an icon of the tail end of the muscle car era of the 70s, mostly thanks to its inclusion in the film. However, it has been documented that Pontiac originally only supplied 2 Trans Ams for the production to use, one of which was a 1976 model with 77 front-end clips and decals added, and can be seen at the entering Texarkana sign, fitted with 1976 honeycomb wheels. Though it would later prove that just 2 Trans Ams would not be enough, as the cars would be destroyed 2 weeks after filming began, and the production went back to Pontiac and begged for an additional 2 more. Finally on the road and starting from Jonesboro, Georgia, Snowman is given the companion of Fred as his co-pilot in the big rig, a basset hound who had been selected via dog show specifically organised by the producers in order to find the canine suitable to take part in the film. As the chase begins, we the audience are treated for the first time to an alternate version of the film's iconic main theme in the form of Westbound and Down. When first asked to come up with a song for the film by Hal Needham, Jerry Reed delivered the unforgettable Eastbound and Down and played it for Hal. After finishing his performance, Jerry asked Hal if he wanted to change anything, to which Hal responded, "If you change one word, I will kill you." After finally reaching and loading up their cargo in Main Street, Jonesboro, Georgia, doubling for Texarkana, the race to deliver the goods begins. It is soon after that we get the entrance of the secondary part of the plot, as we the audience and Bandit are introduced to runaway bride Carrie, alias Frog, played by relatively newcomer to the big screen Sally Field, who was famous at the time for playing the title role in the TV series The Flying Nun and Gidget. Fields was cast at the insistence of Reynolds himself, who had admired her work on Gidget and had convinced the executives at Universal, who did not see her as being sexually appealing enough, that she would indeed be right for the role. Picking up and driving off with Frog on Mundy's Mill Road, not long after, the lead Smokey to our Bandit finally appears in the form of comedic legend Jackie Gleason, in perhaps the most iconic role in his career, next to Ralph Crandom on The Honeymooners, as Sheriff Buford T. Justice of Montague County, a reference to which is seen on his car door, yet is without reason blurred out in post-production, perhaps due to complaints, though this is not fully determined. Modelled loosely on Burt Reynolds' father, Burt Milo Reynolds Sr., who was himself a law officer in the American South, and was the basis for the now famous term "some bitch" expressed to great effect by Gleason. Sheriff Justice is shown to take over the film from this point with his comedic timing and quick temper. Paired with the dimwit of a son called Junior, and actor Mike Henry of Tarzan and NFL fame, we begin to be informed that Kerry was in the process of marrying into the Justice family before abruptly fleeing. Given her location and breakdown on the side of the road in Texarkana, this would indicate that Sally's character had been on the run from the sheriff for about 245 miles, travelling east before breaking down on her way back to New York. Now in pursuit of the Bandit, Justice is seen driving a 1977 Le Mans sedan Enforcer, which Pontiac had supplied for to the production and was available in a similar engine option package as the Transam itself. It is soon after the action of the film fully kicks off and the chase really begins. Being referred to as Smokies by the trucking and CB communities of the time, this was a reference given mostly to Southern Police Patrol forces, as their choice of campaign hats assigned to them were of the same style as the famous PA anti-fire mascot Smokey the Bear. With several short bursts of speed and chases taking place on backcountry roads, Sheriff Justice finally makes his presence known to Bandit, where soon after, a wonderfully executed stunt by the Trans Am to overtake Snowman takes place. What soon follows though is a stunt gone wrong by the pursuing Justice, left in the finished film, where the Le Mans police car and its driver miscalculates its turn in as it overtakes the Kenworth and spins out of control, causing the truck to slam on its brakes and ram the police vehicle, adding to the damage seen throughout, and the start of what would be the first of many running gags of destruction seen on Sheriff Justice's patrol car. Coming up to his first roadblock in Deason County, Arkansas, Bandit is able to avoid the barricade by turning into more backcountry roads, where we see that the path ahead is without an exit, as it is mentioned that Mulberry Bridge had been in disrepair for the past 6 months. It is here we see a setup for a stunt which took place at Flint River Road, Jonesboro, Georgia, once again filling in for another location. With stunt performer Alan Gibbs filling in for Burt Reynolds behind the wheel, the jump took place with the Trans Am travelling a distance said to be over 150 feet, where it was mentioned in interviews that the car was totally demolished upon landing. Taking place towards the end of production, the jump became a highlight of the film, as the camera was overcranked to capture the scene in slow motion, and was the last shot of principal photography. A break in pace takes place soon after, where stopping to drop off Frog and pick up some food, a brief interaction occurs between Bo and Justice, where according to Gleason himself, no other scenes existed between both the sheriff and the bandit, and one was placed in upon his insistence. There had been other reports from producers and crew who claimed that there were several scenes of interaction originally in the script, yet after this comedic exchange, it was claimed Burt made the request for no more to take place.
Let me have a Diablo sandwich, a Dr. Pepper, make it fast, I'm in a goddamn hurry.
Changing her mind, Kerry steals the Trans Am, not fully establishing if she was intending to pick up Bandit, as he suddenly rushes out to avoid being identified by the sheriff, where he finds Frog driving off in a frantic manner. With Sally's character now behind the wheel, Justice begins to gain ground before another accident takes place, where a stunt executed by performer Bobby Bass filling in for Jackie Gleason occurs, showing the Le Mans drive under a mass transport beam, leading to the roof being ripped off of the patrol car.
Daddy, the top came off. No shit.
A scene follows where the Trans Am, still driven by Field's character, accidentally finds itself jumping into a youth football match. On September 17, 1976, when the scene was to take place at Reedham Park Football Field in Lithonia, Georgia, a stunt was devised in seeing the Band 1 drive wildly on the grass during a game where a number of local youths were brought in to enact. The stunt had gone wrong, where a groundskeeper was alleged to have wet the field the night before, and although Needham and his crew tried to compensate with Pirelli tyres in hopes of better grip on the wet grass, there was a major loss of traction during the scene. With Burt Reynolds as passenger according to himself, and stuntwoman Janet Brady doubling for Sally Field performing the stunt, the car lost control as did Janet, as she went into a state of panic according to Burt, which resulted in several children being run over by the Trans Am and sent to the hospital with minor injuries, and the car finally crashing into and demolishing a dugout.
I'm riding with her. We go over the wall, and she just panicked. And I saw kids in front of the car disappear.
Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, and production went on despite the protests of Reynolds, who was now more demanding about cast and crew safety than ever before. The story furthers along, as we begin to see a genuine connection between Burt and Sally on screen, which according to both was real as they had grown fond over each other during production. Burt and Sally had become a real-life couple and would go on to star in 3 more films together, after their relationship grew and both had proposed for marriage at one time or another, yet neither had ever agreed to do so, and their relationship would later dissolve, with Burt referring to Sally as the one that got away. Breaking past another blockade and performing a wonderful burnout of the Trans Am, Bandit, once again filled in by Alan Gibbs, escapes the scene by crossing a shallow river in Helen, Georgia, doubling for Mississippi. Several comedic exchanges take place, and the screen gives more time to Justice and his continued demolishment of his patrol car, where according to interviews, during most of his scenes, Gleason was given free rein with and ad-libbed most of his dialogue to comedic perfection.
There wasn't any script. The director would stick his head in the window of the car and say, "Now we have to go up to the thing and you'll see him there. What do you want to say?" I said, "How about something?" He says, "Great."
After a brief encounter between Snowman and some bikers, and Bandit and Frog taking time for themselves, the race against the clock continues on, with the pursuit entering Alabama, where we the audience for the first time get the proper famous rendition of Eastbound and Down, while a highway convoy assists in Bandit's escape from local authorities, who along with the 77 Pontiac Le Mans, as seen giving chase, are also seen in 1975 Plymouth Furies and 1973 Dodge Polaris throughout the film. With the end of the chase now in sight as the crew finally enter Atlanta, the climax begins where in a miscalculation, Snowman is surprised by a motorcycle cop pulling him over, played by pre-Dukes of Hazzard fame Sonny Enos Schroyer. It is here a rescue by Bandit and Frog takes place, where we also get a wonderful reminder of the soundtrack composed by Bill Justice and Jerry Reed, with unforgettable scores and themes. Quickly disposing of the motorcycle cop in his 1970 Triumph Tiger, it is here where the chase comes to its fullest culmination of stunts and high-speed interaction, as the Trans Am shines in the final attempt to the finish line. Following one final support for Bandit by local assistance from a group of youths and their hot rods and pickups, the smokers begin closing in, as Bandit finds himself overwhelmed and is ready to give in and give up until Snowman decides to take the lead and the Kenworth becomes a battering ram as the chase reaches the former Lakewood Fairgrounds, Atlanta, Georgia. Breaking through the Southern Classic and making the 28-hour delivery with 10 minutes to spare, the race comes to an end with Bandit and Snowman ditching the Trans Am in Kenworth and requesting an escape vehicle, and is given a way out in the form of Big Enos's 1974 Cadillac Fleetwood Eldorado, carrying an 8.2-litre 500 cubic inch 210 horsepower engine, along with a double or nothing bet travelling to Boston to pick up clam chowder for Big and Little Enos in 18 hours. One last comedic exchange with the still in pursuit Sheriff Buford T. Justice in what little is left of his Le Mans takes place, with the film coming to an end and Eastbound and Down playing over the credits, leaving the story not fully establishing if the truck and Trans Am, along with the cause, was left alone or confiscated, leaving a massive dent to the bet with the loss of the truck and car we'd never see again in any of the follow-up sequels, nor do we get the answer if Bandit was able to make the 2,000-mile trip from Atlanta and Boston back again in 18 hours. However, some have mentioned there was nothing in the offer that did not say that the bet could not be completed via plane trip. Released initially on May 19, 1977 in New York, Smokey and the Bandit was not received well, and the studio had feared that the movie was dead on arrival given its poor audience reception. It would not be until later that month, when released in the South and the rest of America, did the film go on to become a box office hit, and eventually gross over $300 million worldwide, and was the second highest grossing film of that year, behind another first-time installment into a then-new trilogy that could not have been any more different from one another, Star Wars. Part of the reason Coors beer was not allowed to be sold east of the Mississippi was due to Coors not having a national distribution network. However, it was stated that one of the biggest reasons for Coors not pursuing greater national distribution was due to the beer itself being unpasteurized, meaning that it needed to maintain a constant low temperature during storage and transportation, otherwise it would have spoiled before its recommended time. As such, freezer-based transportations cross-country was not as widely available at the time, leading to the lack of distribution of the beer past Mississippi. This did not change until 1986, when Coors finally got its national distribution network and the beer became readily available nationwide. Although Coors was not officially illegal to transport from state to state, it was illegal, as still is, transporting unregistered beer across state lines in large quantities, adding to the confusion by some as to why it was seen as bootlegging within the film. Being released as a single in August 1977, Eastbound and Down, written by Jerry Reed and Richard Feller, went on to spend 16 weeks on the US country music chart, peaking at the number 2 spot, and would become the signature song for Reed and was part of the reason for the movie's success. The film would also gain favour among other well-known figures in Hollywood, as it was revealed by his daughter in an interview many years later that Alfred Hitchcock considered Smokey and the Bandit to be his favourite film of all time, as he would watch it on a weekly basis right up until the time of his death. With Smokey and the Bandit becoming an astronomical hit, thanks to its hijinks and good time good old boy fun, almost everyone involved soon became household names, while the star had been even more greatly thrown into the spotlight, as they would forever be cemented in history for being remembered as taking part in the film. Pontiac Trans Am sales had close to doubled after the release of Bandit, going from 69,000 units a year to almost 120,000 units. It was in thanks to this leap in sales did the head of GM at the time offer to give Burt Reynolds a brand new Trans Am each year for life. However, only after a few years, Reynolds stopped receiving his gift, and when called up to ask what had happened, the new head of GM had told Burt that the old department head had died and General Motors was no longer going to honour the deal. In an odd twist of events, where at one point it was publicly recognised that the animated series of the Flintstones was a knockoff of the famed Honeymooners starring Gleason, in an ironic twist, when Smokey and the Bandit was edited for television, several of the curse words used within the film had to be altered, with all cast members agreeing to redub their lines where needed, with the exception of Gleason, whose famous catchphrase "some bitch" was changed to "scum bum," read by Fred Flintstone himself, Henry Corden.
You scumbuzzards couldn't close an umbrella. Where are you, you scumbum?
Ironically enough, scumbum had become a new term of cursing among children of the 80s after watching the film. With production completed, and most if not all patrol vehicles demolished during filming, and given the low budget and grueling demands on the cars involved, none of the original Banshee Square headlamp-fitted 77 Transams survived the film, as they would be demolished or returned to Pontiac for parts. In February 2022, a 1977 Pontiac Transam, used as promotion for the film and was part of Burt Reynolds' private collection, sold at auction for over $450,000 by Barrett and Jackson. For the gold and black coffee-painted Kenworth trucks acquired for Bandit, information varies as to the exact fate or numbers used, though it has mostly been stated that 3 were used or survived the film. During production, the exterior driving scenes of the trucks were done by Hollywood chase legend Kerry Lofton and others uncredited. Jerry Reed did not do the actual driving of the rig for his close-ups, as his scenes were shot with the Kenworth resting on a trailer bed towing him and the crew around. It was said that the trucks used were obtained for the film and left with Universal Studios, and were either originally part of their transportation fleet or would be used thereon for production transportation. Of the 3 Kenworths claimed to have been obtained, 2 1974 models are thought to have been burnt down in a warehouse fire in 1979, while the third 1973 model is said to still exist, and had been repurposed for cattle transportation use in the 90s. Again, as there is no definitive answer, as mostly rumours exist, and records from the 70s film productions were not as well kept, it may never be fully determined what became of all the rigs used in Smokey and the Bandit. As for the trailer hauled by Snowman with the famous Bandit mural displayed on it, 2 were said to have been used and decorated for the film, one of which has been thought to have been destroyed in the same fire as the 2 Kenworths, while the second is said to still exist at Riverwood Studios in Sonoy, Georgia, and has been claimed to be the same one seen in Season 7, Episode 10 of AMC's The Walking Dead. Reprising his role 2 more times officially as Sheriff Buford T. Justice, Jackie Gleason passed away in 1987 at age 71, leaving behind a legacy in TV and Hollywood. Country legend Jerry Snowman Reed would also pass away at age 71 in 2008, having only returned for a handful of movie roles post the Smokey and the Bandit trilogy, the last of which he had finally gotten to play the Bandit, giving us, the audience, a small glimpse of what would have been had he been originally cast as was intended. Following the success of the first Smokey and the Bandit, Hal Needham would team up 6 more times as director with Burt Reynolds, in 5 feature films and 1 made-for-TV movie, including Hooper, Smokey and the Bandit 2, Cannonball Run 1 and 2, and Stroker Ace. Hal and Burt's friendship continued throughout, as Hal did not gain the same height in his directing career as he did with Smokey and the Bandit, though did find cult status in his 1986 BMX craze film, Rad. Hal Needham would pass away on October 25, 2013, at age 82, having broken the Hollywood mold as being one of the first stuntmen to make it as a director, a trend which had become more prominent in recent years, with action directors such as Chad Stahelski and David Leitch of John Wick Deadpool fame. With over 185 acting credits to his name, Burt Reynolds would continue to become a staple in action and car chase films after playing the Bandit. He would at one point become the highest paid actor in cinema, as he was offered $5 million to star in the Hal Needham directed ensemble car action piece, The Cannonball Run. Although both Burt Reynolds and Sally Field had continued their relationship after Smokey and the Bandit, the pair went their separate ways, and Burt would often look back on his time with Sally as some of the best years of his life. His 2017 film The Last Movie Star played as an almost autobiography of Reynolds, as he played aging actor Vic Edwards, who throughout the film reflected on his previous movie roles, one of which being The Bandit, as footage of young and old Burt were edited together in a touching exchange that saw Reynolds come to grips with his mortality and career as an actor whose work spanned 7 decades in the industry. Burt Reynolds would unfortunately pass away on September 6, 2018 from a heart attack at the age of 82. Smokey and the Bandit, despite its less than popular sequels in its official trilogy, is greatly loved by many, and a reminder of a time of family fun movie hijinks and its characters an unforgettable theme song. The story of Hal Needham and Burt Reynolds' collaboration of the film, and the close leading actor and stuntman friendship, were even the inspiration of the characters of Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton in Quentin Tarantino's film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. With leading cast members all but gone, with Sally Field being the last of the main leads, still alive and still enjoying an illustrious career in Hollywood, their memory and work lives on in the film that has become a generational bridge between young and old, who are now rediscovering this classic through family members and social media. Smokey and the Bandit is a film that defied the odds and left its mark in cinematic history, and made the names Bandit, Frog, Snowman and Buford T. Justice etched into our memories for as long as time will let us remember them.
back, you son bitch! You did that on purpose! You're gonna wait till you agree!